Welcome back to the table, friends. I'm your humble host, GreyDMs, and with me, as always, is my co-host and co-conspirator, Owen.
Hello.
You are listening to Tabletop by Night, a weekly podcast where we continue our exploration of Vampire the Masquerade. Tonight, we gather around the table to answer the question, what's next?
Dan, I don't know the answer to that one.
It's kind of hard. So this is officially session 23. When we started this podcast, we intended to go through all the clans, which we did, and talk about the factions, which we did. There is more material to go over, so we don't want to scare you guys away. We will probably dig into the books and the bloodlines going forward, but we're kind of taking a break here to talk about the future, talk about some stuff that we did that might be cool, and start trying other things. Mm-hmm. So one of the things that we did is our little game group will likely be playing in a vampire game due to this podcast.
Yeah, that we basically flung against the wall during a podcast. Yeah.
So we thought it'd be kind of fun for us to randomize the creation of some of the figures in that world. So these aren't player characters, but these are positions within the framework of a Florida-based kindred society that includes Anarchs, the Sabbat, and the Camarilla. And while I know that there is official lore for Florida in previous editions,
forget about it.
Yeah, don't expect it here.
We're going to do our own shit.
We're kind of do some stuff. So we're going to start with that, and then we're going to go talk about some other topics afterwards. So both Owen and I have a character that we will go over. And a little part of this game, and in my case, it won't last very long, is just because of what, you know what I'm saying? Like, we're not going to say what clan or what position the person has until the end. We're just going to kind of see what the other person thinks, you know. Like I said, this might go quick.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to become painfully obvious.
Yeah, I think for both of us, and so it'll be interesting. But yeah, these should be some fun characters, and maybe someday you'll get to hear them being used. You know? So would you like to start us off then? Or?
I can if you want.
Sure.
So what the person I have is a gentleman by the name of Harrison Abernathy IV. He is flawlessly dressed. He has perfectly tailored suits. He has a very meticulously styled silver gray fox, hair. A very polished look to him. This is something that's been worked on for, years and years just to kind of create this presentation for everyone to see before him. Kind of has a refined sophistication, kind of a powerful, I don't know if you want to say like a public figure sort of thing. Okay.
Narrowing it down.
Okay.
You going with like the twist clans and the ones that are like safe bets? Okay.
I wish this was a twist, but it can't. So he kind of has like a magnetic charm that draws people, kind of like a smooth talking salesperson or maybe a charismatic megachurch preacher type of guy, Maybe he's got a little bit of a southern draw to him, but he's very good at persuading, inspiring, and a lot of this just kind of hides the self-serving motives he might have, So he likes to infuse his conversations with, subtle moral or religious overtones, kind of presenting himself as a figure of, virtue, righteousness, Basically, he uses this to kind of subtly influence and manipulate those people around him, I'm sure it's pretty obvious by now. He kind of has a controlled, fervent enthusiasm in discussions and public appearances. He does like to be kind of a public persona. It might be a little difficult during the daytime, but he does what he can. But this is kind of makes his strategic calculations a little hidden underneath the veneer of all that. So he has an extensive network of connections that he uses to kind of steer the decisions around outcomes of different, events and things to his advantage. He likes to charm people, uses diplomatic skills maybe to manipulate people. So likes to host large events tries to kind of blend in with high society with a touch of religious and moral fervor to it. He's trying to, really, blend in, but at the same time kind of take the high road on things.
Okay. So
really make himself,
So let's pause there for a second, because legitimately, I mean, this is good, but legitimately, I don't know.
Really?
So I mean,
Okay.
Once again, because of our time spent together.
Okay.
Yeah, that's why.
Okay. Why don't you
let's break it down. Okay. So let's say the top contenders.
Okay.
Venture is clearly one of them.
Mhm,
Like this person definitely embodies things that the Venture clan, very much so, like controlling a situation, orchestrating things. The religious side is kind of interesting because Venture basically usually like to make things the way they think should be right. So that's very interesting. Toreador being the charismatic charm, that makes perfect sense. Yep. But nothing's been said any artistically, so I think I have to kind of drop that, right? Even the Bruja kind of makes sense because this one has basically his opinions. He's trying to guide people. He's trying to say these things. So those I think are like the ones that I would say if this was a safe bet, I would be looking to those clans. Okay. So I'm not going to look at the Nosferatu or the Tremere. Kind of doesn't make sense that much. Now, of course, like you said, maybe it's not a flip, but like the other ones that I'm thinking of, like religious, this very much could be Lasombra.
Yep.
Very much. This could also be Sedite because those fit really well here. So I am very curious which way this is going to go.
I think you're not going to be surprised.
Okay.
Because a lot of this I took from, as we go, I'll hit a few more things on that's going to become painfully obvious. But the big thing you have to look at is the location, the type of people that he's going to be around. So he has to conform himself a little bit to that. Like he might have his traditions and his things that he's used to, but he's realized very quickly it's easier if I conform a little bit and fit into that.
It's leaning one way.
Yeah. And it's not leaning towards. Doesn't start with an S. No, okay. Sorry. Ooh. But, like as any creature in the night would have to adapt to its surroundings in order to survive. It's kind of the same thing. So, yeah, he likes building on that. He likes to exploit people based on the morality and righteousness. Again, I see how this being me creating this character, I know this is very difficult for you to pinpoint, but I mean, it's not. But yeah, he likes to, manipulate people in order to, get what he needs, and religion is easy pickings, unfortunately. So he has a sophisticated control over his vast network of properties, his operations. He orchestrates his domain with a blend of finesse and calculated control. So, culmination of all of this is he basically runs a cartel of sorts called the Condo Cartel.
Okay. There we go. So if you've been listening, I think we've talked about this. I think we did. This now makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
So my first impression was the safest one to go.
Yeah, your first impression was correct.
That's why you said that you were going to hate this guy.
Yeah. This is the primogen of the Venture. Who runs the Condo Cartel, who basically runs the retirement homes and condos of the retirees of Florida.
You could just imagine this guy coming to tell someone that they basically need to like vacate the premises, even though they don't have a place to go.
Oh, absolutely.
And that's the last minute, just to throw in that little bit like, you know what? Remember, every time there's a storm, God puts a silver lining somewhere, right? I get the fuck out of the
He tests those with the most faith to ensure that they know they are doing right by him. Now get the fuck off my property.
Very much. Yes. Very good. Oh, yes. This will be fun.
You like that guy?
I do. I do like that guy. Very much so. I think you've created someone who's, yes.
Yeah, I mean, my whole thought of this guy is like he's old. Like he's not just old physically appearance, like he is an old vampire. He's been around for a while. His family's been around for a while. Property has kind of been their thing for a long time, which in Florida, property is a big business, but he just kind of moved on to this because he's like, this is much easier pickings. I already own the property. I'm just going to have this constant flow of people moving in, moving out. It's going to be easy to take care of because Old people die.
That's what I was literally about to say. I was like, it's the great thing about old folks' home, high turnover.
Yep.
You know?
Yep.
Oof. That's very interesting. Any other cherries there that you want to mention, or
no? Just reiterating on things that already exist. You know, I didn't want to get too far into it without knowledge of a lot of the other things that's going to be going on. So.
It's true, and that's going to be a little more difficult for you because I have to take all this stuff and kind of turn it into something. Whereas these characters, kind of like making them exist on their own, is a little bit different. Okay, very interesting. I hope. That was pretty good. I mean, like you said, like it painted a picture pretty quickly, and it's just playing around with whether or not I thought it's like how far. Yeah, it was good. Okay, so I did a different approach. So instead of describing my character or describing the character I'm going to talk about, I'm going to kind of talk about who they were in their history.
Okay.
So once again, I think this is pretty self-explanatory about as soon as you get about halfway through. It's just like it's obvious. But until then, so I looked up some things that were interesting. Mm-hmm. Did you know that Florida was settled twice by the Spanish?
No, I didn't.
So Florida was originally settled by the Spanish during their campaign of basically settling most of the Southern America and then South America. Mm-hmm. And Florida was no different. But then apparently due to, various Spanish wars, struggle, they pulled out and British took over. Okay. And then basically the British lost rule again after America gained their freedom or their independence. Freedom, oil, America. And the Spanish actually got the rights back to Florida, or they basically went back to settle. But the second time their settling kind of failed. Mm. Their military presence and a lot of like the people that they went there to gain control went, but like they couldn't get a lot of people to settle there. Mm-hmm. And most of
because it was a swamp.
Yeah. And most of the families that had settled there originally were pulled out during British rule. Mm. So there was a kind of a sense of not going there.
Yeah.
By the time they got any momentum going, what ended up happening was that Creole, like basically people coming from along the Gulf Coast. Mm-hmm. So basically the blending of the French and the Spanish, and then just Americans that were now showing up. They all moved into Florida along with a bunch of runaway slaves, and they all created the culture that is Florida. So if we go back to that second settling, when you have forces coming in back into Florida to gain their foothold to basically set up forts and military presence and stuff like that, and you have families that might be a little bit more desperate, we start talking about the Ortiz family. Mm. So the Ortiz family basically finds a golden goose, they think, to go settle into this new land. Mm-hmm. They had a history of their grandfather, uncles and stuff being some of the military forces, some of the conquistador kind of mythos has filtered down through. So they very much have this image of being settlers in an untamed land and going over and basically setting up shop. And they do. And out of the whole Ortiz family, the youngest is Mateo. And Mateo has sufficient siblings that he is allowed a little more freedom.
We can afford to lose a couple.
Kind of, yeah. So he has been allowed to kind of grow up and be fostered by these older brothers and sisters, and to kind of grow up being inundated by these basically tales of, blazing trails, finding secrets, the stories of El Dorado and the search for the Golden City, the Fountain of Youth, and all this stuff like that. So obviously he turns into a very charming, charismatic young man who wants to go out in the world, and he wants to basically make his presence known. But this is Florida, and this is an area that is heavily engaged in a lot of commerce and travel and piracy and things like that. So a lot of those influences come in, and he goes down to the local, pubs and stuff, and he listens to these stories, and eventually he stumbles upon a piece of information that he finds credible, and he starts planning his life around it. And he thinks that he's heard of a tribe that lives in South America of people, specifically of women, who are ageless. And he can only think that these must be caretakers of the Fountain of Youth. So him and a bunch of his friends who are kind of rich They got some money. They want to go make themselves, or fresh out of college. They want to go do something, that kind of, thing. They put together, money from their parents. They put together an expedition and they start heading down the coast. Now, a bunch of rich Spanish kids, like, at first sounds like a fun time. Meanwhile, this is the turn of the 18th century, the 1800s. So the beginning of the 1800s. So, basically the United States is not in what it was.
No.
Most of it's not there. Also, there is not a lot of organization below us either. So he basically ends up through a series of adventures that'd be probably really interesting to watch, kind of going with his friends and losing, his fortunes and gaining them as he makes his way down, until eventually, a couple of years into his journey, he stumbles upon this tribe deep in South America in the mountains and the rainforest. And what he finds is a tribe of kindred. And these kindred are all protectors. They're watchers, specifically meant to safeguard, meant to hold back an ancient evil that they call the one who cries in the forest. This is a real character because I wanted to make this legitimate a little bit.
Okay.
She who cries in the forest.
Okay.
And she who cries in the forest, little side note, happens to be one of the reasons why Brazil becomes a vampire haven, because they have to fortify Brazil in order to deal. But we'll keep on that. Yeah.
Okay.
So he stumbles upon this kindred group, and of course, their goals in life, or their life, is basically to hold back an evil. They don't want people ever finding them. Right. So they turn on their party en masse and just get rid of them. But you have this charismatic man at the lead, and he's so the youngest of them, basically the highest generation, the childer of the group, decides, like, basically pleads with the others to have a pet. And embraces this young poor Mateo Ortiz. And over the course of the next 20 years, keeps them as a pet to amuse the others in their daily, nightly rituals of doing what they need to do to keep this great evil. And her name is Gemma.
Okay.
So, Mateo suffers greatly during this period.
Yeah.
But as time goes on, he eventually comes with enough understanding of his powers to take advantage of a situation one night, break out, and he diablerizes his sire, Gemma, and runs off into the forest.
Kind of a dick. But I mean, he wasn't exactly being treated well either.
Yeah. So he, killing one of them, runs off into the forest, and now he's basically stranded off in South America. And over the course of, I would say, many years, decades even, he kind of comes to terms with his vampiric nature, moves his way up north, goes from port to port. This is basically the early 18th century, so there's not a lot of, like, freighters heading up north, but he definitely grows, and all the time he has this kind of sense of unease, but he wants to go back to his family, and he kind of wants to get away from this horrible kind of position he was in. So he gets back and he finds that his family has all become deceased. There's outbreaks of disease and tragedy.
It sounds like it's been like 40 or 50 years.
Yeah, it's been a long time too. But the thing he notices is that all the gravestones, with every family member he can track down, all have two things in common. Obviously the Ortiz name, and somewhere on the gravestone someone has carved in Gemma.
Ooh.
So he begins to feel the eyes of his pursuers upon him, and he retreats into the city because he knows what they can do in the swamp, in the glades. And so he starts to use the skills that he's acquired. This career of investigation, of knowledge gathering, of hoarding secrets, but he becomes a shut-in because he doesn't want to leave the city. He doesn't want to leave the safety of the people, but he starts burrowing and he starts amassing his fortitude in fear of the other who's in the forest.
Right.
And he starts throughout the years too afraid to leave, embroiling his power base and hearing these songs of these people of the woods who often ask for him and say, Gemma would like to see him.
You said it would be easy, but I'm not, like, there's themes here of several different clans. So I'm not sure.
Well,
Like, I feel like it could be Nosferatu.
Mhm.
I feel like it could be Malkavian with that last bit right there. I even feel like a little bit it could be like Gangrel with their like ties to nature and the forest and things like that.
Absolutely. So, good
but
choice.
I'm not sure I'm touching on the one that it could actually be though.
Well, it's probably good then. I think I've created a more all-rounder.
Mm-hmm.
So as time goes on, and I think when we come to present day, we find Mateo is very much a kind of a shell of the man that he once was.
Mm-hmm.
And he is very much and very foremost a purveyor of dark hidden secrets that he likes to control.
So that sounds like Nosferatu.
He's
100%.
Nosferatu.
Okay.
Because then the women, whatever followed him, became the people of the Everglades,
Gotcha.
producing. This is why we have two Nosferatu Primogen. We have whatever Genma person is using that name becomes this figure of lore that exists throughout the Everglades. And there's now this ancient reason why the two never cross, because all the protected, Nosferatu know you don't go out there.
Right.
But they also know that in Nosferatu lore, the Niktuku, the dangerous things that are out there.
That's what I was going to say, because the Nosferatu have I couldn't remember the name, the Niktuku chasing them.
She who cries in the forest or she who cries in the night, which are two different names for her, is a fourth generation Niktuku. And she's the reason that the Nosferatu of Brazil dig deep and fortify. So I wanted to kind of use that in this kind of cool idea that you have a very paranoid, secret, magic-obsessed Nosferatu at the heart of, but also at the same time you have these crazy Nosferatu who may not even understand, because there's generations down the road.
Yeah, they might have completely forgotten about this guy and don't even know what's going on with him.
But they know how to twist things for the city Nosferatu, how to throw those insults in there, and they know what scares them. So that was
That's good. That's good. I like that.
That'd be pretty cool. So, Mateo Ortiz. Yeah, I think that's pretty cool. I like that.
That's very good.
Well, I hope you guys like that too. So we're going to try to probably do a little bit of this as we go forward. The bloodline information is not as robust as the clans. So when we do talk about that, we are probably going to have more topics per episode. And also we're probably going to splice in some other stuff. We have plenty of books to go through. So just know that a lot of that's going down. So,
and for anybody that doesn't know, it's a little bit outdated now, but there were novels written for different clans, and I've read a few. They're very good. They're very well written, very interesting, kind of give you a really good close-up taste of how a clan might function, or at least an individual of that clan.
So we hopefully will extend all of that, get to use until we find a break somewhere at the end of the year, then we come back for next year to kind of revamp things a little bit, and then maybe start going through White Wolf.
Yeah.
So for those who are diehard into the vampire thing, you could probably leave it there. I figured I went through something cool recently. I got to go to something that was a first for me, so I just wanted to talk about it. I wanted to use the podcast for those who know to also hear discussions about it, talk about the experience. I got to go to Gen Con, and I got to go to the Renegade Studios booth, and actually where they sell the Vampire the Masquerade stuff. So
what was that like?
It was pretty cool. So a lot of the companies that own these things are now like these bigger companies that own multiple brands. So although they did have cool displays for Vampire the Masquerade, it wasn't like
center focus.
Yeah, and it wasn't like if you went to BlizzCon or something, it was dedicated towards something specific.
Right.
There were other things that were displayed. There's a board game, and the board game is something like the Fall of Milan, which is pretty cool.
Really?
So I think it's the Tremere Fall of Milan.
Yeah. We'll have to play that.
Yeah, I was like, that's pretty cool. I want to get my hands on that, but I was a little
sticker shock.
Yeah, timid of hey, the thing in the glass case, where is it? I want that. Yeah, there's a lot of sticker shock. So anyway, let's go. Let's go in order. Okay, explain things that happened. So I got to go to Gen Con, and we got to basically sign up early. You go into a lotto for a lot of things. There's some takeaways at the end of here, which I'll explain for stuff. So Gen Con is a big deal. It's a crazy big deal, and I did not appreciate how big of a deal it was
until you saw it firsthand.
Until many things happened. For starters, like, you really got to get on board early.
Yeah.
So basically in January, I think they basically do their... So first of all, they have this very important gamer thing where you can pay like $700 for your badge.
Mm-hmm.
But if you do, you get like priority booking for the hotel. Yeah, that was... I put in for that, but like we didn't get that on those. Anyway, so then you go into like, okay, now you sign up for your badge. And if you sign up for your badge, you're entered into basically a hotel lottery of like when your chance to book is. So we both went in separately, and basically the cool thing about their site is you can like, everybody can have an account, and you can basically like friend everybody.
Mm-hmm.
And that way you can buy hotels for like groups up to a certain amount. So a lot of stuff like that was pretty cool. So we both went in, and I got very early booking, apparently.
That's good.
And so as a result, I've been reading a lot of stuff about people talking about hotels to go, and basically a lot of people are saying, hey, this is my favorite hotel, but like this is the one I tend to go to. And I was like, well, why don't I go with the fancy one?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. We should go to the train one next time.
Yeah, I was envious of the train one.
The train one
when I found out that you could actually rent them.
Yeah, because we were walking around and they were talking about that. So anyway, so we got the JW Marriott, which is basically their super expensive fancy hotel. The cool thing is, and the really spoiled thing, is that like you can walk out into the con.
Mm-hmm.
So most of the ballroom and all the like the festivities in the JW Marriott were just on the bottom floors,
right?
And then you could just walk down a corridor and go into the hall, and like that experience of realizing that you were in a labyrinth of miles of interior space, which is also kind of my thing, but filled with the sweatiest, geekiest people you've ever seen in your life. That was weird.
What was the thing you said? You've seen every iteration of middle-aged man that you
middle-aged white dude, middle-aged heavyset nerdy white dude. I've seen everything the character creation can put together. So we got down there because it's just a long, annoying drive, and we go in, and the first cue that of some opinions I have was that, well, we went up to the bed and we dropped off like our initial stuff, but then we're like, hey, we got stuff to bring up, so can we get the hotel cart, pile all that stuff up? And they were like, oh no, we don't let that, we'll go with you. And I was like, oh, okay, cool, that's weird, but gotcha. Well, yeah, because bougie places do that
for you.
So we had this attendant come out with us, and we pile all our bags and water and redneck looking things on top of
onto him.
Yeah, and I'm like, okay. And then we get up, and she was just disinterested in everything we were doing. And at the end, when she finally, followed us up there, we just, like, I slipped her a tip, and she was like, oh, thank you. And I was like, okay, whatever.
That's what it was. That's what we were waiting for.
But that's what I said after that. I was just like, okay, Sunday, we're sneaking out of this place. Like, we're taking small trips to the car. So, speaking of which, like parking, you have to spend like $50 a night, $50 a night.
Really? Just to park?
Yeah. But on the other hand, I got a really close parking spot to like, because people just probably didn't think it was there.
Right.
And so that was really cool. It was this weird back and forth the whole time where like we were probably 50 feet away from the door. So it was a very short walk to the door, go up elevator, we're inside, go up another elevator to our room. We have high room looking out over the city. I took pictures of like
I was very jealous of.
That was pretty funny. So we get there, we check everything out, and then we have like an hour before they close the hall on Thursday. So we go walking in the hall, and basically I go walking out, and the weird thing is, in normal life, if you're like one of us, probably you listeners too, you like geeky things, you generally have like your spider sense tuned up for geekiness. So if someone mentions something or someone wears a t-shirt or something,
peaked.
Yeah, I was going insane. Everybody was wearing vintage D&D t-shirts, and I'm like the dude in a button-down shirt. And I'm like, I look like I'm normal. This doesn't make any sense.
Fucking narc.
And everybody's like older, like older than us even sometimes. So I was like, this is just so weird on so many levels. So we go down and we go to start walking around, and like we walked into the hall proper, and I'm like, yeah, okay, this is pretty big, and we walk in like through the doors into the actual hall. the first hall. And I'm like, wow, this is freaking big. It's crazy. I look up, there's a picture of the BattleTech thing that's like the size of a house. So there's a big giant banner that's crazy. I'm looking around and it's like, I mean, it's like when you work at a factory, right? You know, like big buildings.
Yeah.
Like buildings that start breaking the concept of size in your head. That's like this place is, right? And it's just filled with people playing games and sitting down and just all these different booths. And we're walking around. I'm like, oh, this is crazy. And we get about halfway through as we're walking through. And I'm like, nobody's selling anything here. I thought this was the vendor hall. Oh, no. This is the annex vendor hall. This is the place where you go to play cards.
Right.
And I go walk into the next room and I'm like, what the? It's just huge, packed, every conceivable board game vendor known to man. Like just, I go walking past the Warhammer booth, you know, and all we wanted to do was go get food. So we wanted to walk through it and then like go get food. So we're walking around and like I go past and like the guys from Wormwood are there and I'm like, and like, cause you develop all these weird parasocial, you know, relationships.
I know you. No, you don't.
Seriously. Like, that's basically what's happening, you know, so that's crazy. And we make our way out and like figure out how to go to the mall because you can basically walk all the way, like literally an out a mile or more. You can walk to the mall, like through all the walkways
the whole way.
Get to the mall and we're like trying to figure out where the food places are. So we go into one of the restaurants and they're like, hey, do you have a table for two? And they're just like, yeah, like 2 hours. I'm like, all right, gotcha. Makes sense. Nope, not doing that. So we end up getting like A&W.
Yeah, I remember I looked at the Reddits for that when you were sending us messages and stuff about it. And I didn't think about it at the time, but there were a bunch of messages where people were just like, hey, if you're having a hard time finding food, there's this place that's like a 5-minute walk away that all these food trucks went to, but nobody knows they're there.
It's kind of another thing I learned was there's a lot of places that just have free food, but they only tell people like vendors and stuff that they have free food because they want to get people that like to pitch stuff to.
Gotcha.
And so they'll go to these places and have these meetups with a bunch of vendors and a bunch of like, you know, companies and stuff like that. But like you can go in there and get free food if you know where they are because they don't know who you are. Very weird. So
just make something up.
Yeah. Head all the way back. I'm almost dead, you know, like just because I didn't realize
so much work.
Well, it's like 4-story mall walking through and it's hot. It's the thing that I'm really used to in Texas, but I'm not used to up here where you're in a building with blasting AC on you, but you're hot.
Yeah.
Because they can't actually lower the air temperature. They can just hit you with AC constantly. So you're like, I don't feel like I should be hot. In fact, I'm a little cool on the outside, but I am burning up inside. So we make our way all the way back up and we think, I don't think the concert was on that night. I can't remember. But anyway, I think,
by the way.
Yeah. So, yeah, there's another thing because like we go over and we're sitting there, we're like, oh, this is so nice. And we go to sleep. We wake up the next day and then we're like, okay, we have places to be. Right. So I'm like, I have to go down to some place called the Stadium, you know, which turns out to be actual oil stadium where the Colts play. So I walked through the vendor hall and this is when I started looking for things and I start realizing that like most of the stuff here is a trap for you to buy. Like, if you're going here to buy stuff, and this is when I started having this weird duality of like being upset and being happy at the same time because I'm like, oh my God, that's so cool.
That's the thing I love.
I don't want to buy it. Right. I don't want to buy it here. I want to buy it like with a discount someplace else. But that's awesome. I love you, you know, the next thing.
Man, way to support your local vendors there, Grey.
And there's so many people who are like, hey, do you want to try this game? And I'm like, no, because I'm a shut-in. I'm an introvert. I don't want to do anything.
No.
Like, seriously, I was like this weird whiplash back and forth. And the second day when we walked down there, we went past one of the cafes that's in the hotel, and Adrian from Tabletop Titans is just sitting in line talking to some other dude. And I'm like, once again, it's one of those things.
I want to go talk to him, but I can't talk to him.
It's like, I have seen this dude for hours during COVID. Like, I've watched him play games, and my brain's like, you know this person. And it's going through all the work stuff, all the school stuff. It's like, he doesn't fit in anywhere. And I just have a stupid look on my face going like, I know that guy. And he's just talking, and I was like, oh shit, no, that's a dude from YouTube that I don't actually know. So
it's me, Grey.
So we go walking around the hall, and basically, once I got to the art wing, we split our way. Because, my partner decided to go, just commit her crimes.
So many crimes.
which I thought I'd be the one to do it. So then we walk around and I start checking everything out. And it's, like I said, it's really cool. If there are places that you want to go, if there are games that you're interested in, and this is the place where they debut them, these are all really great reasons to go. It is a lot of crazy, weird, sweaty geek stuff. And being surrounded by that 24/7 changes the physiology of your brain. Like you just, like I was just getting used to that was the normal, you know? Mm-hmm. So eventually I make my way to the stadium and I found that you could like go into the seats and sit and watch everybody, and like you had air conditioning and it was nice. Right. And I was like, cool. And I was like, oh, you can get food here. I was like, let's remember that. So I finally found my room and like went in for a podcast for a thing about podcasts. Mm-hmm. Or that was the TTRPGs. Once again, I was telling you earlier, I found that Ivan, I think his name's Reitman guy, like he's from Hunters, from a game studio called Hunter or something. Hunter Studios, or whatever. They did Kids on Bikes 2, mm-hmm. and they released one that's actually pretty cool called Alice is Missing.
Oh, okay.
And the whole game is played.
Of that.
Yeah, the whole game is played over text message.
Really?
And the whole thing is basically you're supposed to be like people in a high school where this girl went missing, and mm-hmm. you have to like find information, and everybody's got like a piece of information they may not understand, but then they have like, it's a whole thing, but like it's very interesting because you have to it like you have to set everything up, but if you do set it up the right way, it's a very unique experience. So like got to hear a bunch of cool stuff about that. Once again, in a room where they're talking about TTRPG stuff, and I'm like, yeah, man, oh man, I could like, you know, talk about the game I want to make and stuff like that. And they're like, who here is going to make a TTRPG?
Everyone raises their hand.
Back again to that back and forth. And like, I'm just like every other person here. Oh,
I'm different, just like everyone else.
But like, once again, crazy, turn around, like walk outside and you see people dressed as stuff. You see a bunch of cool cosplays. You see, you know, not some cool cosplays. They're just, you know, low effort.
I was wondering if one of you was going to do a cosplay.
She wanted to.
Mm-hmm.
We'll leave it at that.
Okay.
It did not.
I'll get it from her.
It did not happen. No, like it's a lot of effort and stuff to do that. And like, there's some people that were like, there was a woman like when I first walked in that was dressed up as Morgana from the Darkstalkers.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Faithfully. I was like, I need to not go that direction. Yeah, so every once, it's just like I said, it's just weird. You're walking around doing stuff like that. So then I can't remember if we met up for food. Anyway, I think I walked around some more, and once again, this time I was like starting to go like, yeah, I'm going to start spending money. I'm going to try to find a place to spend money. I'm going to try to spend money, and I keep going to all these rooms where I'm seeing people play, and I'm just like, you know, it's weird. I didn't sign up to play any games. And if any of you have been to Gen Con, you're probably screaming at me now. Going, that was the dumbest. Yeah. That's the point.
That's what I was waiting for you to talk about was some games.
I didn't even play any games. It just lapsed the concept of. I was so fixated on like going to
the experience,
and going to these sessions where people are talking about stuff that I just like didn't sign up for any games and stuff, which is why I was saying like I really think it'd be really nice to have a small group of people,
right?
And then like kind of cherry pick your experiences. Mm-hmm. So, but I think the second night I believe was the night where we're sitting there and we're like, oh hey, there's a concert going on across the street. And I was looking up, and so I got on the phone and started looking up what's in Indianapolis, and then I saw that it was like Primus and a Coheed Cambria or something.
Coheed Cambria.
Yeah. And so I'm listening to him and I'm like, I don't recognize that. But then again, I listened to a little bit of Primus, but I was like, that sent the text out and stuff like that. And we went to bed early.
Like the old people that you are.
Like old, and we're sitting in bed and all of a sudden I hear, that's Primus. Primus was headlighting that. Okay, I get this now. That makes perfect sense to me. But that was cool. And so the second day we go down, and now we've got like, we gotta go split, go do two different things. I go to, the first day when we came back, we met up to go to the Adventure Zone book signing. Mm-hmm. This was cool because this was the only thing I went to that I paid for. The rest of them were like free tickets because you have to have tickets to get and everything. And it was like $26, and I was like, that was weird. And like all their other stuff was sold out.
Yeah.
But like it was $26, and I was like, okay, well, like if we really do this once, I want to do it. We walk in the door and they hand us the next book.
Oh, nice.
Which is $26. I was like, oh, these guys are awesome. And then we sat there and we listened to listened to Griffin and the dad, and yeah, all of them except for Justin, because he wasn't there. But that was cool. Like, it was hyped. Everybody's pretty happy. That was kind of awesome. They're very funny and on point. So the second day I went down and I went to so I went to this whole thing that was like the business of streaming live play. And I was like, that's cool. Like, I want to go to that. And I get down and there's this really excited dude there. And he's just like, yeah, okay, you guys can come in. Cool. Like, and we get in there and he's like, yeah, we're going to have like 30, 36 people here. I want you guys to be engaged because I need to get feedback so we can tell, yeah, there's like 10 of us and there was only 10 of us. And we're all kind of looking around like, oh, okay. So it's not the best.
So why don't you all introduce yourselves?
Like, he started doing stuff like that, but then he realized that some of our eyes got really wide and he was like, oh, okay, I don't think I'm going to force people. Really nice guy, has a big background as an entrepreneur, quote unquote, and ended up basically being part of a group that wanted to do a live play. So basically he was in the unique situation, which is the interesting part of it, of like, he could go get money to set that up.
Okay.
Now, to my knowledge, they didn't succeed that much. They have a channel, and he was really happy about the two sponsors, some cup company and something. But like, the cool thing,
need sponsors, by the way.
yes, sponsors. But like, it was really cool to like, he at least that part was cool where they talked about like setting up stuff, and then but like, it was all like a PowerPoint presentation, and like a lot of it was like, anyway, it was a cool effort. And then clearly halfway through, you're just like, oh, he keeps putting pictures of Critical Role up on the screen.
As an example.
He's not Critical Role. But like, there were some cool ideas. So I got out of that, and then I was like, I got to go spend money. I got to go find and spend money.
It's funny because my whole existence in knowing you have never had trouble spending money. So I find it quite hilarious that you had trouble spending money.
I had a list of things I wanted. I went to 3 different booths, and I was denied in all 3 booths, and I went home. Went upstairs and I was like, that was when we had the conversation where I was like, I didn't spend a lot of money. And, it's good. Things work out in the end, I guess.
I mean, I like the dice you got me.
Yeah.
I didn't have my own. We just kind of had the community dice.
Well, I figured you have to be able to, curse, bless your own dice. Maybe if you just, every time you torture a place.
These shall be desecrated.
Exactly. Just be like, your tears, you need to wipe them in this bag. I need to collect them. Yeah, so then we kind of had our last night up there, which another band I think was playing, and then we went out in the morning and we kind of snuck out, even though the con was still going on.
So annoying, yeah.
Like Sunday is like their wind down, but then weird, we left and got back, started putting stuff away, went out to the store, did all the normal stuff, and I started looking around and like, where are all the t-shirts, and why don't people walking around with Pokemon plushies and stuff? And like, I had to like deprogram myself from that mode of just,
why doesn't it stink like BO?
Yeah, well, actually, I was pleasantly surprised that those air filters moved because like, I was heavily dousing myself in every deodorant product known to man to make sure I was not an offender. And like, there were some people who like, okay, let me put it this way. When I was going up the steps and I was having my like, my, oh my God, I'm going to die moment here on the con floor step, I looked over and saw a dude twice my side with a cane who was basically looking at the steps going like, I think I need to call someone. And I was just like, this is weird. Am I home or am I at hell? I don't know.
Then I realized he was wearing the same shirt as me.
It's me. There's also a couple
really nice vest.
There's a couple of times where like I went into like an elevator to just skip a flight of stairs, and then another dude walked in, and we just kind of like, yeah, we understand. Next con will be in better shape, right? Like, yeah, okay,
next time.
But yeah, it was
goals.
So it was cool. The things I want to get to are like, one, the thing I learned the most was you have to play. You have to go in. So the way their site is set up, like you basically have to filter through events and get tickets, but like do it. Find games to play. Like I kept shying away from a lot of the games that they were playing through, but like every time I passed a room where people are playing games, and they're playing games into the night, like to 10, 11 o'clock. There are people throwing down on Pathfinder and D&D stuff at like 11.
Fun.
I know. That's why I was like, this is what I did wrong. this is what the whole thing should have been, was not the commercialism of going out and like looking at all the fancy stuff. That's nice. I know someone we know would walk around that place like and just blow his mind and like, having such a great time. But like, that was what I wanted to be. I was like, I wanted my friends to be there at those tables to sit down and throw dice
next year.
Exactly.
We just there's one particular person that we're very strongly going to have to insist he takes a few days off.
The second thing, like, pick the hotel better, because the best hotel does not, like, there were, like I said, parking charges, and we got food there, and, you're talking about, like, not as, I mean, it wasn't bad, but you're just the payment. Oh, they have this whole thing where they have, like, the executive lounge.
Yeah.
And like when I'm up there checking in, she's like, "Oh, do you want our executive lounge?" I was like, "I didn't get that before. Like, what is that?" And she's like, "Oh yeah, well, it's like just $50, and you can go in there and you can get lunch every morning." And I was like, "Oh, that's great." And she's like, "Yeah." I was like, per night.
Oh,
and it was my fault, but like no one stopped me, and I was like, "Oh yeah, sure." And then I was like, we went in every morning. We went into a place where we couldn't sit down and just grab food, and we're like, "This is not worth $50."
You couldn't sit down?
There are too many people in there.
Oh, okay.
Like you basically had to like sit around and look kind of like sad. Then somebody would get up and be like, "You're sitting. This is where we were. We're leaving." And I was just like, this. It wasn't bad food, but it just like was not that. The place was designed to milk money for you.
Yeah, yeah.
So the thing you need, and here the recommendations are, you need to play games. You need to go in there with people who know what they're doing and they can like make the choices.
Yeah.
Like I said, the Crown Plaza Hotel with the trains and that was the one I want to get into next time. That was cool. It was not the Marriott, but like it was cool. It's right there with everything else. I walked through it to get to one of the things, and like I was sitting down and I was like, "Oh," I had to go confirm that you could rent out those.
Yeah, I appreciate that.
And I was just like, "That's cool. That's really cool." I wonder if that's on the reserved list.
That'd be awesome.
But yeah, like ultimately, like I could totally see going there like Wednesday.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. So that was the problem too, is like when we reserved the rooms, I don't know. I don't remember the day spread, because I think we were kind of pigeonholed into Thursday, Friday, Saturday, but maybe not. But like I can totally see there going, like spending 4 days there with a group of friends, hitting up, like some days we go do our own thing, but there's some days when, we're hitting these games or going to these events. There were people like when I was sitting in the stadium that were just like riding and celebrating because whatever game they were playing, something big cool happened. And I just was like, that's what this is all about.
Yeah.
That was where all the fun is.
Yeah. It seems like that would be the sort of thing that you could do the entire time you're there.
Oh yeah. Like I completely could understand 4 people going and each one having a very different experience. Mm-hmm. And I just think the initial time I kind of picked the wrong kind of thing, like I don't blame anybody, and I don't feel bad about it. It was great, but I definitely recognized what I needed to do next time.
Yeah.
And so I'm kind of, I don't know if we're going to go next year or if we'll go over, if it'll be a 2-year thing. I want to go like organize a thing of going down there.
Right.
Like, I think that getting a 2 hotel room and like maximizing the way you do stuff and reducing costs and stuff, it will be a lot funner.
Yeah.
But like, yeah, it was cool. It was just weird to walk around and see people in the shirts of obscure games that you're like, how the heck did you get that? And then to like get back on the elevator and to sit there and look over, and a dude's got an old D&D shirt and like some Warhammer in a box. And he's just like, yeah, I know. And I'm like, this is awesome.
He's always like, what? And you're just like, this is so awesome.
I'm saying is, if anybody is going to be a venture that's going to form a retirement community in Florida, Gen Con notes.
Yeah.
Take those notes.
Right.
Okay. For those of you who are still listening, I know this is probably
we've expounded for a while.
Yeah, this is probably the most thrilling podcast you've ever had. But hey, we appreciate you listening. We did get all set up on YouTube. I think I mentioned that a couple times previously. We have people who listen to us that I don't personally know.
We appreciate that, and we are surprised and confused by it.
It's awesome. The people have like reached out and put a few comments. We're not a. It's cool, like giving a heads up and, telling us feedback and things.
You guys suck.
Well, I mean, it's always true, but hey.
It's just nice to be told every once in a while.
Yeah, you got to keep it checked.
Yeah, right.
But no, we appreciate you guys spending time with us and listening, and we look forward to having more fun together.
Yeah.
Well, with that, we're going to end the rambling now.
Right now.